Right, we are live. Had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but I think we got it sorted. Let's just make sure all systems are go and we're streaming to the YouTubes. And it looks like we are. Good, 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 good. Let's go ahead and mute that. All right, hey folks, thanks for hanging in there, waiting for us. We just had a couple of the normal, as anticipated. Whenever you do anything live, there are gremlins that show up, and for no reason. Especially you do anything live with professional audio gear, the gremlins show up and like to screw with you. So we killed those gremlins and are now gonna save them for consuming after the show. But they're gone. We got everything going. So we're gonna go ahead and start. Thanks everyone for showing up. I see there's a bunch of people in the chat on YouTube. Thank you guys for showing up. Christopher Berry, our TWiP community manager, is in there as usual, holding it down. So if you guys have questions during the show, feel free to go ahead and post them in there. Make sure you mention This Week in Photo so that your question gets highlighted. And what Chris is going to do is take your questions, collate them, and then drop them into the section, basically our Q&A section of the Google Doc that Wayne and I use to walk through the show. So that's it for housekeeping. I'm excited to be back to doing the show live. We stopped doing it live for a couple of weeks there just because I didn't want to do it live. No, because there's a lot of factors involved. But we're back to our live schedule again for Wednesday evenings. We may be switching it to a different evening, but I'll be sending out an email to the TWiP email list as well as in the TWiP Pro community to solicit input on what the best time of day to do these is. Last time I did it, we came up with this time, but I just want to take the temperature of the audience to make sure that it's still this time. But anyway, enough of me. Let's get the show literally on the road. Stand by. So as you guys know, if you've watched the show before, the live broadcast, you're basically sitting in the studio audience as we record our live program. So you get to see the nuts and bolts of the show as we do it. And part of the nuts and bolts are me doing this intro that I'm about to do right now. All right, here we go. Stand by. Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the best camera ever made. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. This is going to be an interesting show because aside from my admittedly clickbait title of this show, the best camera ever made, there's a couple of other things that we want to talk about, and that in no particular order, but they are in order that I'm going to mention them. There's the best camera that's ever made. We'll get to the bottom of that thing. We're going to talk about DJI and the corruption controversy that those guys are dealing with, the employee corruption controversy, and how will that affect DJI as a company, and how will that affect DJI competitors? I'm sure a lot of them are dancing a jig right now, but we're going to talk about that a little bit. And if we have time, we're going to talk a little about trade shows and that world. We're getting into trade show season. In fact, one of the sponsors of this week's episode of TWiP is WPPI, the Wedding and Portrait Photographers International Conference that's coming up in February. But I wanted to talk about trade shows in general, and are they worth it? Do you find that they're worth it? Does Wayne find that they're worth it? I have some sharp opinions on it, which I've shared on This Week in Photo before, and I want to sort of open up that nut again and talk about trade shows in general. And should you be spending your hard-earned money to fly to where they are, or can you grok all that information from YouTube videos like this or from blog posts, et cetera, et cetera? So joining me to step through those topics today is my good friend, Mr. Wayne Johns, also a TWiP Pro member. Wayne is here in the middle of the night. What is it, 2 a.m. where you are, Wayne? What's going on?
2:15 in the morning here, and I've been up since 6 a.m. the day before.
Wow. Well, everyone in the chat room, give a clap emoji for Mr. Johns for taking time out of his REM sleep to join us on an episode of This Week in Photo.
I apologize to I apologize to everyone watching. It's not the best look that I've got this time of the morning.
I'm digging. That's kind of an Aquaman look you got going on there. You know, you see some long hair. That's very cool, man. So before we get started, what's going on in your world? I know you have a ton of projects going on. You're working on audio stuff, obviously
Yeah,
photography. I've seen your posts. You're posting regularly in the TWiP Pro community. Amazing shots, making everybody cry.
thank you, man.
What's going on in the John's world?
I'm busy, man, at the moment. I'm so busy. But funny enough, I'm still playing a little bit of catch up from last year in editing and retouching about 7 or 8 shoots. So I'm just trying to get through those and catch up a little bit, whilst planning more. And I've got more events coming up. I've got more live shows coming up. I've got a trip to Dubai coming up for a conference, and
Dubai. Wow.
yeah. So that's for Fujifilm. So yeah, man, it's crazy at the moment, and trying to get more YouTube videos out, and obviously the podcast channel, and trying to get all the guests interviewed. It's crazy town. I ask myself why I do it, but yeah, it's fun.
You know why you do it because you do it for the same reason I do it because we love this stuff and you wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, what other era could you do this? You know, you couldn't. So you're riding
Yeah,
the wave of content creation, man. So
yeah, man.
well, cool. Well, we got a lot. Like as I said in the intro, there we've got a lot of stuff to talk about on the show, from the best camera stuff all the way through to DJI and trade shows, etc. Before we get started, speaking of trade shows, I want to thank our sponsor for this episode of This Week in Photo, and that's our friends at WPPI. WPPI, in their words, they say, this is what I want to say. WPPI gave me some specific things to say, that some messaging that they wanted to get out, and it's all very true. So I'm gonna read it, but then I want to tell you what I think a little bit. So basically, they want to let you know that you can learn superior technical skills and shooting styles. You can build new relationships to grow your business. You can experience new products, photo gear, and other solutions from manufacturers. Discover the competitive and affordable ways to grow your business. Meet some of the world's finest photographic instructors, and more importantly, you make an investment in yourself and your future. And what I would add to that, all that is true, but what I would add is that's not exactly what WPPI is for me. You know, it is all those things 100%, but it is also the camaraderie and the meeting other photographers and seeing other people in the industry that are kind of doing the same thing that you're doing. It's those hallway conversations that you have at WPPI. It's the after hours events where you're, talking about, hey, why do you shoot Panasonic, or why do you shoot Fuji, or why do you shoot whatever? It's the human interaction that you get at an event like that you don't get behind a keyboard or in front of your phone. So the bulleted list that they gave me is 100% true. You get all those tangible assets, but the intangibles, I think, are even more significant, because it's the one time of year. If you pick one trade show to go to, that's the one time of year that you get to kind of go to a family reunion, or your high school reunion of all the photographers that you've seen online. And not only that, is when at these kinds of events, people like Wayne Johns and other sort of top end working photographers that are in the trenches doing stuff, that's the only time where you can go tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, Wayne, I noticed you shoot XYZ brand. Why do you shoot that again? I'm thinking about buying it, but why? Can you give me one or two sentences as to why you use that piece of gear? So that's what I wanted to say. WPPI, is one of those shows for me. It's one of two shows that I like to. Well, there's a couple of shows I like to attend, like the Photoshop World shows and all that. But the tentpole shows for me are WPPI, Photo Plus Expo, and some other smaller events that happen throughout the year. But if you're a wedding and portrait photographer, WPPI is kind of the show that you have to be at, or else you'll get that FOMO, the fear of missing out. So WPPI gave me a link to share with you guys. It's wppiexpo.com/TWiP. If you use that and you haven't registered already, you will get a free expo pass, which is $30 to get into the show floor. So if you want to get in free, just use that wppiexpo.com/TWiP, and you can get into the show for free. And that's all I have to say about that. All right, guys, Wayne, let's dive in. Our main topic is one that you and I were chatting about today through, what was it, through Messenger, or no, it was on TWiP Pro. We were talking on TWiP Pro, and that's the idea of what's the best camera that's made today. And of course that's hyperbole. There's no best camera that's made today. They're all great for the most part, but we get on this release schedule, or the manufacturers are on this release schedule of, what is it, like every couple months, quarterly or something, there's a new awesome, I gotta have it camera body, which, just like your phone, when Apple comes out, or Android, Google, whoever, Samsung comes out with a new phone, yours instantly looks like crap, right? So you have to go
Yeah,
get
yeah,
that new one. On this show, I'm really glad that you're here, Wayne, because you are one of those people that you beat the hell out of your gear. You use it, and you upgrade because you have to upgrade, because you
yeah.
need the new gear that's going to do something specific. What do you say about that? What is your opinion on that whole upgrade conveyor belt that we're on with these new camera bodies coming out regularly?
Yeah, I think it's changing a little bit now, but over recent years, say the last 5, 10 years, I mean, back then the two main giants, I think Canon and Nikon, were probably the most guilty for bringing out a new body with a new a number. And when you look into the guts of it, it's still the same plastic body, and it's got a little firmware upgrade, but they've released a whole new system.
Yeah.
And I think they're very guilty of that. And for a lot of years, I think Canon and Nikon have milked the absolute hell out of the consumer market on those type of products.
Yeah.
You get the Canon EOS 5000, and then you might get the 5050 or the 5500. And at the end of the day, there's almost zero difference between them. But hey, how to milk a market, and as consumers, I mean, damn, they fell for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. But is it? I mean, to be fair to the manufacturers, it's like you and I were talking about in the chat there. It's a lot of it is these companies are beholden to their shareholders, right? So the pressure is on to make more and more money every single quarter. Quarter over quarter, it's the trend line has to be up and to the right, right? So how do you keep it up and to the right without releasing a new camera body every single time? And once you do it once, do you set a precedent for your consumers that it's almost like a subscription? I know I just bought this camera,
Yeah,
and I know in
almost.
3 months, 6 months, or whatever, there's going to be a new body, and I need to start budgeting for the new camera, after
Yeah.
this one I bought. I mean, is there a way to get out of that?
Do you know what? I think when you look at the markets, when you look at the sort of what we know as the professional market, the people that earn a living from their camera, that run businesses, that market is quite small in comparison to a consumer market for people that just buy a camera because, hey, they fancy taking up photography and they want to look good walking down the road with a big lens on a decent sized body. And I think the manufacturers were guilty of playing that a little bit, knowing that these consumers, as the hunger got more and more and the interest in photography grew, then, hey, they were just caning these things out, knowing the consumer is going to buy them, and knowing that, hey, no matter what they produced and what they put out, they're always going to get brand new sales, because all the gear whores out there always want the latest and greatest new tool with all the new features in it, even though, a lot of the amateur worlds that just carry as an aesthetic, can't shoot for shit, really.
Yeah,
If you
yeah, and
excuse
I'm on
my,
the.
you
I
know
mean
what I
that
mean?
that train. Yeah, I agree, and that whole train of buying the latest and greatest piece of gear, right? I'm on
Mm,
it too. I want the latest phone. I want the latest drone. I want the latest mirrorless camera. It goes on and on.
yeah,
There's several
yeah.
niches that I am beholden to, and I want it. But when I look at photography, and especially as I get older, maybe it's a factor of me getting older. As I get older, as money is not as much of a factor. I mean, it was back in the day. It was like, wow, I'm going to save up for a year to buy that camera. But as you get older, presumably that becomes less of a factor, hopefully. But my what do you call it? My the feeling that I have of not wanting to buy new crap
Hmm.
is stronger now, right? And I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
it's the
yeah. I'm
minimalist
with
in
you.
me.
Me.
Am I a minimalist now? Because I just want less stuff. But the stuff that I want it to do more, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
but then at the same time, like manufacturers, like I'm a Panasonic shooter. I love my Panasonic Lumix gear, and I'll shoot that forever. But I want them to stay in business. I want,
hmm hmm
and the way that they stay in business is by putting new bodies out, innovating, better
yeah.
sensors, and all this stuff. So what's the win there? Do we count on a constant influx of new people that don't know any better to buy new stuff so that the people that do know better can thrive? Like, what's the
But it
answer?
is. Well, it's funny because if you take a look at the markets, I mean, ever since mirrorless was introduced, the DSLR market has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah.
And, Canon, even though they were the biggest of the DSLR brands and, owned over, 60% of the market or something in years gone by, Nikon then started suffering when mirrorless started coming in to the degree that they were financially in trouble DSLR wise. But I think everything's changed. I mean, DSLR sales, because of things like smartphones, where the quality of those cameras are getting better, and the people that wanted to carry a camera around are now happy to just carry a smartphone around.
Right.
So it means the DSLR market and the mirrorless market is reducing and reducing. So I don't think they can produce as many bodies now as often because there isn't the mass market that was buying the numbers of bodies in the first place. That market is shrinking, and I think people are getting wise now that people that couldn't really operate a camera are happy with smartphones. So the cameras they now have to produce have to be more professional and more complete inside with all these new features and the way video is going because people know how to use this stuff now.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they don't have to know how to use this stuff in the case of smartphones, right?
Well, they
You
don't.
just
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
boot up
exactly.
the
Yeah,
camera and
it's
aim
getting
it, and
so clever.
the droids take over, and you
Yeah,
pretty much have a picture, uh, composition notwithstanding. So, but even that, they're working on ways to get around the whole composition issue to make sure that
yeah, I know.
you can fix that. But with that said, where in your opinion, and based on your daily work, where are the areas for improvement where a manufacturer can create a camera that would entice you to upgrade? What's missing? And what do you shoot? You're shooting
Wow.
Fuji, right?
I'm shooting Fujifilm. Yeah, I mean, as we said in one of our previous ones, I'm a Fujifilm ambassador, and I have
Yeah.
been for a few years now.
Hmm.
But I made the switch from Canon after 23 years to Fujifilm before I was even invited to be an ambassador. So, I've moved on my own steam, and yeah, medium format wise, I used to shoot Hasselblad and Leica, but of course I shoot Fujifilm on the GFX series now, and I mean, like we've said, I mean, cameras are so good nowadays. I mean, they do far more and far beyond we could probably use as features at any one time.
Yeah.
And I think, especially the amateur market, the pro am market, they're all wanting, 300 frames a second with zero lag in continuous focus tracking, and they want it to make the damn coffee and moaning it's only got one card slot and all this. I think there's just too much over a lot of things because if you took all those features away, then half of those people couldn't shoot their cameras properly anyway because they rely on all this technology
Yeah.
to compensate for the skill set.
But is it so devil's advocate? I already know the answer to the question, but if you boil it down to f-stop, shutter speeds, ISO, the exposure triangle,
Mhm,
right,
mhm,
and then you sprinkle in composition and those sorts of things to get a good photograph. You If it's just that stuff, you could get a
mhm.
view camera like Ansel Adams used to shoot with, right? So you could get a view camera, and if you know your craft, you can come away with brilliant work with a view camera just by manipulating the f-stops, IS, or the f-stops and the shutter speeds and the film emulsion speed that you're shooting with. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but the other side of the devil's advocate side of it is we're not there anymore. I mean, we don't
No.
ride horses anymore. We don't wash our clothes in the river anymore. We have technology to help us with
Yeah.
this stuff. So shouldn't we use it, right? Or should we know the rest of it? Where do
Yeah.
you fall on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think there's a mix of both, really. I mean, I think there's a lot of people, and this is good in both ways because creativity is not all about being technical. So there's a lot of people out there that You start throwing numbers at them in terms of ISO and aperture and things like that. And there's people that numeracy wise get confused with numbers. I know a wedding portrait photographer that would rather all the symbols on my camera were colors rather than numbers because the numbers confuse her.
Oh yeah.
But she's an amazing photographer. But you take instances like that. Not everybody is so technical, but you might get people that are artistic that have a really, really good eye for a shot or composition or a scene, or have visually, visually they can have they see graphical elements and contrast and tone, but they may not understand that in terms of a camera's point of view, in terms of an exposure triangle or all the numbers and how it all works. But you give them a camera that can do most of that work for them, and they will still go and shoot amazing imagery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in that respect, that is where the tool is helping the artist who may not be the technical artist that perhaps most of us are from the manual days or from the film days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas you get that technical artist that will have that box of tricks. If you say take film out of the equation, video out of the equation, have that box of tricks with all those features in their camera, probably like myself. And I've got the damn thing set on manual, and I probably don't go through 70% of all the other features that are in that camera.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue, because there was a Troy Miller, who's a member of TWiP Pro. He does the TWiP Pro photo critiques with me, and he wrote a blog post and posted it in the community, and it was about why he shoots aperture priority. And I commented on the post, and I forget exactly what I said, but I was talking about how some pros will shoot manual and be religious about it, and poo-poo anybody that shoots anything other than manual as not being a real photographer. And I sort of come at, I want to get where you think about this. I sort of come at it from the standpoint of, come on, dude, you spent $3,000 or whatever on this precise optical technical supercomputer engine, and you're not going to use any of the stuff that you bought on principle. So I'm thinking, in my head, you should absolutely know how to shoot manual and know what's happening when you